Let's speak now to Aaron Zelen, a senior fellow at the Middle East Institute and expert on Syria. Aaron, it's great to see you, and this truly has been an extraordinary comeback for Ahmad al-Sharaa. How do you view what we're seeing at the UN General Assembly in New York?
I think for him and the country, it's viewed as a way to show that Syria is back on the international stage in many respects. As noted earlier, they haven't spoken there in 60 plus years. And now, after 14 years of war, Syria can integrate back into the international community again.
But Aaron, certainly Syria is also looking, and Ahmad al-Sharaa is looking for certain steps to be taken by the international community. For example, the lifting of sanctions in order for Syria to be able to integrate back into that community.
Yeah, it's a continuing process within the United States in particular, since the U.S. had a ton of different types of sanctions on Syria, as well as on al-Sharaa and his prior group before the fall of the regime. Right now, one of the biggest issues is related to the Caesar sanctions in the U.S. Congress, which essentially gives second and tertiary sanctions to those potentially involved. And so there continues to be barriers, but as a consequence of the U.S. Creating the General License 25, it waives them for a certain amount of time. And that's why it's giving the place and time now to try and undo them completely.
Is the U.S. close to lifting those sanctions?
It's hard to say. It depends who you talk to and depends the week. So far they've already taken off a number of other sanctions, but as well as eased export controls. But there's still a number of steps related to Caesar, as well as the state sponsorship of terrorism sanctions, as well as some other smaller ones too.
It is a very different picture at home for the president. We have seen, first of all, a Syrian economy that is struggling mightily. Just tell us a bit more about what the president and his government are facing there.
It's a huge challenge. I mean, the country was in war for 14 years. 40% of the infrastructure was destroyed. Half of the population became either refugees or internally displaced. Most of the schools were out of commission. I've been back to Syria twice now, and even in my most recent visit, there wasn't a ton of change from the first one. And so people need to be patient more than anything because, coming back from such a horrific war will take time.
There is also, of course, and perhaps a more critical point for many in the international community, is concerns about religious minorities in Syria and the safety of those minorities. And there are critics who say that President al-Sharaa has not done enough to ensure that religious minorities are protected. Tell us a bit more about what he has said and done on this issue.
Yeah, I mean, in the constitutional declaration that they announced earlier in this year, at least legally, everybody is considered equal. However, we have seen, unfortunately, a massacre that's occurred in March against Alawites on the coast. And then more recently, 2 months ago in July, we also saw another massacre against the Druze. While it isn't the state's policy for those things to happen, because they happen on their watch, they're responsible for it, of course, and therefore that's created more fears amongst different minority groups, even though, say, on a day-to-day basis, really, most people are unbothered and able to live their lives.
Yeah, I'm curious. You said that you've been, back 2 times to Syria now. Do people feel that they can have patience to see the economy turn around, for example, and the country be integrated back into the international community?
I think a lot of locals have high expectations because they've been waiting for 14 years. They're in the civil war. And of course, there have been a number of announcements by the new Syrian government of multi-billion-dollar deals with a variety of countries and companies. However, many of these types of deals take a number of years. And so the questions will be, how much patience does the local population have? For now, I think they're waiting and trusting the government. But we'll see what happens in 2026 going into the latter half of next year as well, and whether you might see protests if there isn't enough progress made on the ground.
Okay, Aaron Zelen, good to talk to you. Thanks for your analysis tonight.
Thanks for having me.